Alrighty, folks, let's look quickly now. Quickly, I think we got quite a bit to dive into here with your 2023 Houston Texans. They draft CJ Stroud. They bring in an entirely new coaching staff. So we have a lot of unknowns here, but definitely have been doing a ton of research into what could be the offense and what we could expect here. So the offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick, very intriguing to me. Comes from the Kyle Shanahan system, was their passing game coordinator last year. He comes in with D'Amico Ryans, their experience together, coaching on the same team last year. They stay together. They have that chemistry. And we haven't gotten a ton of hints as to what this offense is going to look like. But he has alluded to, we're going to be fast, physical. We're tough. It's a team that when you leave after playing us, you say that's a very aggressive, fast, and decisive team that knows what they are doing. So all those buzzwords that you like to hear, fast pace, aggressive, things that you like, and things you've come to expect under a Shanahan/Kubiak tree. In fact, Slowick saying, I watched a ton of Texans film before coming here because it is that Kubiak tree that we've been all groomed under. And you can think about so many great backfields under the Kubiak Shanahan system that great, just get people in space. You establish the run with that inside-outside zone game. And then from there, you open up tons of these pockets for space for your receivers, for your tight end to do a ton of work, including the running backs as well, after the catch. It's a great system. It's a great offense. It's why there's so many from the Rams, all these different variations in there in the NFL. And Slowick saying it's going to be a little bit different from the 49ers, but I'm going to be putting my own kind of twist on what they've already established as a great marrying that run and pass and letting it thrive there. Already in practices, apparently you're seeing tons of motion, tons of these, let's find ways to get these mismatches. That's what Shanahan Slowick said I really took away from him is you can find one mismatch and then you just pepper the hell out of it. Not his exact words. I think it was rip the tread off the football going after whatever that mismatch is. We'll probably see a similar type of philosophy. Historically, with Shanahan's offense over these last few years that Slowick's been there, they've been about 50-50 run pass, 533, 526 pass rush, 528, 518, a little bit below league average. They do play pretty aggressive, but then as they get leads, they really like to slow the pace down, and we'll see if Slowick embraces that. In fact, I don't know that he'll be able to because the 49ers had a great defense to ride on these last couple of years. But you look back to the last season where their defense was subpar, and we saw 57% pass to 43% run, and that's kind of the offense I expect, right around that 570, 570 passes, 443 rushes. I think we get something like that type of balance, a little bit below league average, but with a bad defense, even with a couple nice injections in the draft this year. I think they're going to have to push the pace a little more than they might like to, have to throw a little more than they'd probably hope to on the arm of CJ Stroud. Let's move on to CJ Stroud and talk about him. I actually am really into CJ Stroud. I know the final numbers here don't look overly impressive. I actually am going to bump up this yards per carry because he is a good athlete. It's an untapped Konami ceiling. I think in a 49ers style offense with a lot of bootlegs, a lot of getting him on the move, we're going to see a double that type of rushing output. So I'm going to bump that up. And I do think, these 24 touchdowns, maybe that climbs closer to 30 as we get more feel of who's going to be catching what and how this is all going to shake out. But I like CJ Stroud. I thought he was my favorite rookie in this class, most accurate QB for sure. And certainly that's all you really need to be successful. If this offense does mimic the 49ers that we've seen, you just got to get that ball, hit your receiver in stride, and let them do their thing. CJ Stroud can do that as well as anybody in this class. So really, really big fan of him. Excited to see what he does even as a rookie. I think there's going to be plenty of games where they are chasing points, and he is going to be chucking the rock all over the place. Now the question becomes, who is he chucking it to? And I can't even pretend to have a firm answer to that. But as you can see, I'm picturing a very evenly distributed passing game. As of right now, I don't see a clear-cut standout option here among this receiving core. But it's wide open, given that last year, 357 vacated targets, most in the league. 64% of their target percentage last year, vacated, most in the league. 70% of their air yards, most in the league. So there's a ton of opportunity here for all these new faces that have come in, take over. The only real remaining guy is Nico Collins, and there's questions, in my opinion, about whether he's a great fit or not. So let's kind of just go through what I expect in these target distributions. 18% going to Robert Woods, the crafty veteran coming off now a full year removed from that ACL surgery. He was okay last year too, 90 targets, not bad from him. In fact, Robert Woods, this kind of stat crazy to me. He has not been under 20% target share all the way dating back to his Buffalo days. Since 2016, even had a 20% target share. So 18 is out of line with what he has done in the games he has been active for. But I just see so many mouths to feed, and he's the grizzled veteran. He does have good experience in the Shanahan-style scheme, playing with the Rams. I think that's, you saw them go right after Robert Woods as soon as he got released, signed him to a pretty solid deal there. So I do think he leads the way with his 104 targets. Catches about 65%, right in line with his averages there, 8, 16, and 4. And he's been an okay touchdown scorer. We've seen 7 and 8 touchdown seasons out of Robert Woods, so maybe there's some room for that to bump up. But I do think more of the touchdowns will fall to the tight end, who I actually project tied for second, Dalton Schultz, in target share. We've seen him log 100 target seasons in his past. He is capable of anchor that, as we covered on our tight end top 15 show. Go catch all those ranking shows if you haven't already. Great insight into all of them, breaking down a ton of players. But they talked about Dalton Schultz, how much I love this overall offense. That's why I came here, that Shanahan tree, the way they designed the play designs to get your tight ends in space. And we see how they use Kittle deep. He just liked everything he saw. That's why he decided to choose them, and their coach saying, D'Amico Ryans, big target, quarterback friendly. He's done a ton of damage against us throughout our times against him in the NFC. So I'm excited to bring him here with us. You often see that. Coach Hatley respects a player he's had the scheme against. He brings him in and then uses him just as heavily. So I see a similar load to when he was with Dallas, 78, 808, and 8 touchdowns just 2 seasons ago as the tight end 3 that year. Now, not quite as an explosive offense, maybe a slight downgrade at quarterback. We've already heard good praise from Noah Brown saying Stroud could be as good, if not a lot better, than Dak Prescott. So, hey, maybe not. We'll find out. But I think the volume will certainly be there. Anywhere between 90 to 100 so targets is a fair thing for Dalton Schultz. And that tight end, that is reliable. He's going as a tight end 13. I love that price. So I project him here at 7-10, 7 touchdowns. I think that's going to end up coming out with the top 8 tight end projection, just based on the fact that he could lead this team in targets. If it's not Robert Woods, if it's not the exciting rookie Tank Dell, it could definitely be Dalton Schultz here. So we're going to continue to monitor training camp, and then these will be adjusted as we go to highlight who's building that nice rapport with CJ Stroud. And speaking of Tank Dell, I have him at wide receiver 3, early favorite to be the slot. So that does bump up his catch percentage. I think a lot of easy design throws go his way. Now, there's a lot to love and there's a lot to hate about Tank Dell. So I guess I can get the bad parts out of the way here, in that he is a complete outlier. If he succeeds, he'd be one of the first at his size. He's 5'8", 165 pounds. Since 2000, there's never been an NFL receiver shorter or lighter than him, and no one's ever averaged over 11 fantasy points per game at this size since 2000. So he would definitely be a big outlier, but he's been a huge outlier at the college level, leading the nation with 291 targets across his past 2 seasons, also leading with receptions, 199, yards, 2,727 rather, and second in the nation with 29 touchdowns across his last 2 years. So for a 5'8" guy, that tells me the guy's got the dog in him. If you can score that many from all levels of the field, he runs tough once he has the ball. And they've already just been raving about him so far in camp, that even though his offense is a bit different than what he's used to from Houston, that kind of spread out air raid style, that just is a very beautiful scheme that he really thrived in. Definitely a different offense, but they're talking about how fast he's picking it up, how much energy he brings when he's out there, how different this complexion of the offense is with a speedster that can do it after the catch, that can spread the defense. He can do it all. I'm a really big fan of this guy. He's, in fact, my most owned player in early best ball drafts. So I think he thrives. I think he's a big playmaker. And CJ Stroud, the fact that he begged the team to draft him and they listen, bang the table. Let's go. I like that narrative quite a bit for him. But maybe it's Julio, maybe it's Nico Collins. The early comps, he was told to watch Julio Jones tape from his coach as the big body guy in the Shanahan offense, how they could potentially use him. I will be the last person to ever compare Nico Collins and Julio Jones, outside of the fact that they're both big boys and that they both are pretty fast for their size. 4.45 for Nico Collins, 4.34 for Julio Jones. That's about it. It's a big size guy. And they're talking about maybe we can move to the slot. I personally don't see this being much of a seamless fit there. So, a guy that's averaged 53% catch rate on his career, I bumped up a little bit in a higher percentage attack, but he's only scored 2 touchdowns in back-to-back years. So even with that big frame, he hasn't necessarily been maximizing it. And then you add in Woods and Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz. He had every opportunity to emerge as that guy last year, Nico Collins, and sure, he was playing with jack shit, but I just don't think he's that good. So, 14% target share as the wide receiver too. Clearly, I like Tank Dell more. Nico Collins going 5-6 rounds earlier than him. Not a guy I am ending up with much. But I did want to highlight the fact that they're trying to use him as that next big body Julio Jones style receiver in there. He has similar traits in terms of athleticism, but I don't think he is even a 15th of the receiver that Julio Jones ever was. So I don't think he'll put up a 15th of the stats that we saw, the crazy, like almost 2,000 yard season. Not happening here. So I'm not on the Nico Collins train. Especially John Mechie, another guy that is going to nibble at people's cheese. Him and Tank Dell. Be interesting to see who does win that slot, because if it is John Mechie, then Tank Dell is going to have to get projected significantly lower. And there's definitely some ceiling with John Mechie. Loved him coming out of Alabama. So whoever ends up being that safety blanket, in addition to Dalton Schultz, we know he's going to be it, but somebody's going to get peppered in that sense. So that's how I see things kind of shaking out from a pass catcher role. So none of these guys ultimately being huge successes. No one on the top 35 or so receivers, but the highest upside, in my opinion, is Tank Dell. And of course, Dalton Schultz, one of the best values at tight end you can get. Robert Woods, if you're looking for some desperate last round production at receiver in an early best ball draft, he's going to have a few big games as the veteran presence, as a familiar with the scheme. I think he's going to be pretty solid, the 8 to 12 points a game with very few spikes, but a nice floor there for Robert Woods. So that's how I see the pass catchers. Let me talk about one of my favorite picks in all of fantasy that year. That's clearly Dameon Pierce. I have him at RB14. And we'll see how he shapes up projection-wise where he comes out. But I absolutely love so much about his setup this year and what he could potentially do. Let's just talk about, just in general, Shanahan, Kubiak running backs. You could look at any team over the last 25 years, and if it's been molded around the system, I'd say about 18 of those 25 have been borderline top 12 running backs because of how damn good this inside-outside zone scheme is just for the running game. They have big athletic linemen there in Houston, and they didn't really use them well. They never got them in space. They've already talked about how often they're pulling and getting these big maulers and out into the edge so they can clear some lanes. For Dameon Pierce, a guy that thrived on zone concepts throughout his college career, very successful on those type of runs. We'll see how that translates in this offense. They've typically been a committee, Mostert, Jeff Wilson, whatever it's been. But we've also seen Shanahan, with Carlos Hyde, give over 60% of the carries. And I think Dameon Pierce is just as good, if not better, than Carlos Hyde was. So they're not opposed to it. They did sign Devin Singletary, but to a very small contract. So I do think Dameon Pierce will see a pretty big lion share, 52% of the carries compared to 30% for Singletary. That ends up equating to about 230 total. And I do think, after averaging around 4.3 yards per pop in this next system, we've seen running backs jump a whole yard per carry, and wouldn't shock me at all if Dameon Pierce benefited from that. And certainly rushing touchdowns often go up within this scheme. But the big thing would be the usage as a receiver. You see, look no further than McCaffrey, who we've seen Dameon Pierce be instructed to now watch the tape on. Look how he thrived as a receiver when he arrived. In fact, once he arrived there, Christian McCaffrey, he hauled in 52 passes, 464 yards, and 4 touchdowns in just 11 games. I mean, that is nearly 5 catches a game, nearly 50 yards a game. He was a beast. He's the highest graded PFF receiving back in that time. So we know this offense likes to involve the running backs. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is maybe the best receiving back that's ever played the game. So yes, he's going to dictate more volume than typical, but even just a bump to 45, 50 targets would be huge for Dameon Pierce. Maybe the biggest obstacle in his way of getting that bump, and let me just kind of show where I had him at: 46 targets, 334 receptions for 238 and 2. That would go a long way. One of the biggest obstacles would definitely be pass protection. He was one of the lowest graded backs, but one of the tweets that I think is going under the radar, the running back coach saying it's night and day how much he has improved and sees the big picture as a blocker, picking things up. So even just, becoming a 50% third down type of snap player would be huge for him. So I absolutely love this offense overall for running backs. Certainly at Dameon Pierce, I don't think he'll get that 73% opportunity share, 6th best last year, that he saw last in 2022. But even at just 60% in a much better overall offense, certainly getting more receiving work, I would see that elevating his prospects. When he finishes the running back 20 last year, he's going at that, even cheaper than that right now. So you're buying him at his floor in a ceiling type of offense situation that I think really could just have Dameon Pierce lighted up. Singletary, it will get the scraps. And if anything happens to Dameon Pierce, we're talking about an amazing handcuff situation to be a lead back in a Shanahan-inspired scheme. But we will have to, that's kind of more of just a a handcuff with benefit situation. I still think a nice, efficient season. I like Singletary more than probably most people out there. A good pass protector as well. So maybe he becomes a 70 target guy and takes all the work, and Pierce is moved to the bench. We will see how things are playing out there, but I clearly am projecting Pierce for around 65% total of the opportunities here, and I think he's going to thrive on it. I've currently ranked as my running back 14 and a guy I am. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.